I'm going to call this meeting to order. If you'll please rise. I've asked Supervisor Gould to do the invocation this morning, and then Supervisor Lingenfelter to lead us in the pledge.
If you feel led, please join me in prayer. Lord, we thank you and praise you for this great nation that you've given us, Lord, and our system of government where we get to govern ourselves, Lord, and choose our leaders. Give us the wisdom to choose wisely, Lord. Give us the wisdom to run our county wisely, Lord. Watch over our employees. Many of them have dangerous jobs. Bring them home safely today, to the loving arms of their families. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Join me in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need a motion and action to call for an executive session to be held June 17th, 2024 at 9 a.m.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Official business to come before the board. Discussion of pending or contemplated litigation claims and demands. Mr. Esplin.
Good morning. Nothing to report.
Very good. Committee and or legislative reports. Supervisor Bishop.
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Madam Chair, nothing to report this morning. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Gould.
Nothing today, Madam Chairman.
And Supervisor Johnson.
Nothing, Madam Chair.
And I have nothing as well. We didn't have CSA because there still is no budget. Not much going on down there in Phoenix, but we are waiting with bated breath. We will let you know as soon as it hits. All right, lobbyist report from High Ground.
Madam Chairman and board members, no report from High Ground. Simply the legislature has not been in session, so there's not
Nothing
much
to
to
say.
report.
Okay, and how about a county manager's report?
Madam Chair and board members, I have one item, and it's really a follow-up to recent discussion regarding the board action form, automation, review process, and such. That process is further along than what we were led to believe, and I will tell you that Laura and Nathan are working together to establish some timelines for training and implementation. I will share those dates with the board as soon as I have them, but it's going to be really soon, likely some form of complete implementation in July next month. More information to follow.
Yep.
That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So before we'll go to the call to public, I just want to know if Mayor D'Amico and Travis Pruitt are here. They're here for the presentation about the new bridge. Okay, well, I guess they're not here yet. We will wait their arrival. So on to the call to public. A public body may make an open call to the public during a public meeting, subject to reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions to allow individuals to address the public body on any issue within the jurisdiction of the public body. We'll start with Mr. Scotty McClure.
Scotty from Bullhead, and Hildy, I'm not electioneering, so don't interrupt me this time. The bridge to nowhere, oh boy. I've requested that they put in a road from there to over there, and they won't do nothing about it because there's some billionaire club putting in a Jack Nicklaus bullshit. Excuse my language. Now, I put in a public records request a month ago, 2 meetings ago. I have not been served. Sue Mellows called me. That don't count as having an answer. You got that, Ryan? I'm sick of this. She just talked to me a little bit ago. It's unacceptable, what she's telling me. I guess there was a flag. There was some redacted Jeannie Kent's tax records. She can explain it, whatever. But I want it in writing. And I legally can get it in writing. Open records request. This phoning people or emailing stuff that I don't have email. Well, I do, but I don't know what it is. I don't care about Facebook and all that. I have one, but I don't know what it is. Isn't that something? Anyway, a flag was lifted. It gives her permission to redact. I guess she can remove a flag. Only a Superior Court judge can unredact a tax records or a court order, to go to court. You guys should have your addresses redacted and your phone numbers. I agree with that. If you want. It's your choice. Is that right, Ron? Well, whatever. I wouldn't, with the crazies that are running around, I wouldn't mind you having a redaction. If I need it, I can phone or go to your office and talk to you. Now, I had these signs made up as you go to Bullhead. I had them like this. I cut them in half to save money. These are $1.68. I cut these in half. Now they're down there on the ground almost. You can barely, I've had a lot of people compliment me. They're not blocking anybody's view. The city was going to pick all mine up because I didn't have a phone number on it. Oh boy. And they meant it. They gave me 24 hours. Now somebody's been stealing these things. I've lost about 20 friggin' signs. This is coming out of my own pocket. I do not raise money. I'm a senior citizen and I'm a veteran. I've lost 3 at McCormick Boulevard. I've lost 5 down by Lazy Harry's. And all over this city, you scumbags are stealing from a veteran, a disabled person, and a person over 65. I'm going to ask the judge down there, I caught one person. They have a court date, and I'm going to attend that court date and ask them to upgrade it for stealing from veteran or a person over 65. I think I don't know, Judge Moss is sitting up there. He can probably tell me.
Thank you,
Don't
Mr.
steal my
McClure.
signs.
Armin Stang.
Good morning, Chairman, Supervisors. I'm in Stanger, Fort Mojave, a.k.a. the German, according to my neighbors. And I would like to thank actually Development Services to clean up my neighborhood again. They're working on it this morning on my next door neighbor, 4349. And I would like to thank the supervisors for their effort to keep the neighborhoods clean. And the other thing is the problem with the Rami property. I get woken up between 12 and 2:30 in the morning with their damn thumping music. It's getting really out of hand with the Rami property. I think either Development Service needs to move on there, or the Sheriff's Department needs to do something about noise pollution. We have county ordinances. Please enforce them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Matt Kearns. And then Robert Reeves.
Hello, my name is Matt Kearns. I'm from Golden Valley, Arizona. I've been out here approximately 3.5 years. I'd like to state to you folks, we have a problem in Golden Valley with trash and squatters. I paid $8,000 for 2 acres, 3 miles from the BLM wilderness, and now it's like Hobo Junction. I state to you that the property that is within eyesight has not paid taxes in 10 years. That's $1,400. I went through the whole tax lien, tax deed, upstairs, downstairs, over to Divine. I got solutions, but here's the bottom line. The bottom line is this is county property now, Mojave County. And if you people are not going to step forward and remove these squatters from your property, why should I pay taxes anymore? Why should I pay insurance anymore? Why should I pay anything anymore? You took away our vote. When I voted on Colorado at the firehouse, my ballot went into a provisional box. I went upstairs and I checked, and my vote wasn't counted. Now, for $1 million, we heard Mr. Travis, you state that we can't get a receipt for so you took away my vote, you took away my property. That deed only gives me absolution from the Creator to dispatch anybody that comes on my property, because if Mojave County can't keep their act together and get the squatter off the property, then You guys are null and void. Null and void. Because, Mr. Gold, you're telling me that you're scared because you're going to get arrested as an over-the-road truck driver. Every time I got behind the wheel, I was under the threat of arrest and fine. And now we got 13. Is this Maricopa County or is this Mohave? This is Rhino County, because you people ain't standing up for the people. And it's going to come to a point where I'm going to say enough is enough, and I'm not participating anymore, and I'm checking out. I don't litter, I don't speed, I don't take advantage of my neighbors. But you people up here sitting in an $18 million building complaining about we got a deficit problem when they just got $41 million. Where'd that come from? The COVID money. And that's a whole nother ball of wax. So, what do you say, folks? I lost my vote, and I'm a veteran. 2 tours in the Persian Gulf. Can someone pay me for my property out here? I got about $30,000 invested, and I got a squatter right next door to me. $1,400. I'm going to run my tab up. I'm 64 years old. I got a bloodline that runs to 82 years old. So, where we want to go with this? You want to arrest me? Back in the 1800s, we would have a duel over this.
Thank you very much. Robert Reeves and then Wayne Hollins, please.
Supervisors, now that we've cooled off a bit. I'm a teacher of 46 years. I'm semi-retired. Excuse me?
Sir?
And basically, I have a beef with zone enforcement because their pictures and my pictures don't coincide. And I'm getting a second letter of reprimand, like undefined consequences. I have my pictures, I have their pictures. They also tell me that an RV is being occupied without proper permitting. I have to remove the structure. However, the RV was moved from my previous property, which I sold, and I placed it on my property in Yucca. Nobody lives there. I also have photographs inside, so you don't have to come on my property. I had to stop the situation because I felt like it happened at the very beginning, at the end of November last year. I had a county official come through my property and demand to see how good a care I was taking of my animals, and it wasn't animal abuse. I have pictures of that also. Plenty of water, plenty of food. So, if the county wants to address this, I will. I've already talked to lawyers for the last 2 months. And I have a problem because the pictures don't coincide, and they've also post-dated the pictures they've sent to me. Because I know for a fact I sold a vehicle in one of the pictures in March, and they put April this year date on it. And so I have current pictures, and they have pictures from the past. Thank you. I hope we can resolve this peaceably.
Thank you very much. Wayne Hollins and then Chris Rodarty.
Wayne Hollins, Golden Valley, supervisor and chairman. Discuss illegal dumping. About a year ago, Buster Johnson wanted to update the ordinance for illegal dumping. So I'm trying to figure out what was the effect that it's had and how it's exactly working. This year, the cactus cleaners have cleaned up 78,000 pounds of trash illegally dumped in the desert already, and we're not even halfway through the year. If there's an ordinance that says you get fined $1,000 for dumping, and if you clean it up, it'll reduce it to $500. When does that happen? And how long do we have to leave it laying out there in the desert before we can clean it up? I don't understand how that's going to work. Do we have to wait on the court system to kick in and leave the trash out there blowing all over the desert? When can we pick it up? I mean, it doesn't make sense, the timeline of who's doing what out there. So I'd like to have some clarification of that in the future. So we report when we have a dump site out there. The race comes out and investigates, and we usually clean it up. But I don't know how that's working within the ordinance that we came up with. So that would be very interesting to find out and see what the effect of it is. It definitely has not slowed the dumping down. If anything, it speeded up in last year. And also with the tarp law, 1 week driving up Coyote Path, 3 different days, there's debris laying in the road, mattresses laying off that was probably in the road, and we can't seem to figure out how to enforce our tarp law. And then right after that, an article came out in the news for the state of all the debris on and in our roads in the whole state. So we have a problem. We have a solution on the books. We just need to figure out how to enforce that. We got the dump out there. You get out there to the dump and you ain't got it tarp, then you pay extra to dump. It's pretty simple. If you leave there and it gets found in the desert, then it should be a huge fine and lots of community service to clean up your messes. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. Chris Rodarty, and then our treasurer, Sue Ann Mello.
Chris Rodarty, Mojave County taxpayer. In his first inaugural address, Thomas Jefferson said, "A wise and frugal government which shall leave men free to regulate their own pursuits of industry and improvement, and shall not take from the mouth of labor the bread it has earned. This is the sum of good government." At the May 20 board meeting, Supervisor Bishop declared no Mojave County businesses were shut down during COVID. I'm old enough to remember when all bars, theaters, restaurants, and gyms were closed. Many businesses were subsequently investigated, I have a 7-page list, and harassed. For example, the health department stuck a notice on the front door of Great American Pizza declaring them a public nuisance and a source of sickness. That couldn't have been good for business, yet this board just went along. Rather than defending your actions, you would gain more constituent respect by apologizing and promising to push back against illegal and unconstitutional mandates going forward. This goes for everyone on this board, regardless of cash bait. Sadly, all of you sold us out for a few pieces of federal government silver. You must know that in your hearts. So why not repent now and ask God's forgiveness? We're all fallen. We're all sinners. That doesn't mean we must continue down the path of everlasting evil. The travesty of President Trump's persecution is hitting hard. People are angry, frustrated, sad, and confused. This is Satan's plan to disrupt and inject chaos. Something is in the air. This election season is already chaotic, disruptive, and confusing. Supervisors, be vigilant, be aware, expect an upheaval. But this time, stand up to the bullies. Protect and defend the citizens of Mojave County. Stand firm in the armor of God. In 2 Chronicles 7:14, God promises, "If my people who are called by my name humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and heal their land." Nothing could be more convictive than the very words of Almighty God Himself, calling us to account for our sin and in return promising restoration. Let us humbly honor God's covenant today, and everyone pray for Mojave County and pray for America. Thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer Sue Ann Mello, and then Mr. Greg Beffert, and then Don Martin.
Hello, Supervisors. I just wanted to clarify that Mr. McCleary did do a records request at my office. He was emailed that information with the email provided on the records request, and then he reached back out to the third floor and said he hadn't gotten it. So the last meeting, Board of Supervisors meeting in May, my office manager printed it and brought it out in the foyer and did hand deliver that to him. So I can only provide what pertains to my office as far as redaction and things like that. That has nothing to do with my office. The Treasurer's Office is here to help all of our constituents, and I just want to have that clear for the record. Thank you.
Mr. Beffert, and then Don Martin, and then, what do we got? Jennifer Esposito.
Supervisors, for the record, Greg Beffert. Last time I was up here, I talked about Zionism. I gave that label to Supervisor Angus, and the response I got from her, of course, first I outlined the control that the Zionist lobby in Washington has on our Congress, on our country, the power, the Jewish power in this country, and how anti-Semitism and these terms have been used, weaponized against us to shut down dissent. She, instead of refuting any of the things I said, what she said was, she didn't say, Mr. Beffert, you're wrong, I challenge what you're saying, none of those things. What she said was, I'm a proud Jew and a proud Zionist. And like, that's a good thing. Well, that depends on your definition. And see, it's important to define terms. What is a Jew? What is a Zionist? Go and do the research yourselves. Go find out. Go to my website. I talk about some of these things in addition to principles. If you go back, and which I'll talk about later, she says she's a Jew. Well, is it a religious Jew, Orthodox Jew, Ashkenazi Jew, probably ethnically, light-skinned European Jews whose ancestors never set foot in the Middle East. Never set foot there. Never set foot there. They're not the dark-skinned Sephardic or Mizrahi Jews. What about Zionists? Joe Biden's a Zionist, a proud one, right? By his own admission, didn't Joe Biden say he was a proud Zionist? Yeah. You don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. We have Christian Zionists. Right, Ron? There's all kinds of Zionists, and they range. Okay, so find out what they are. What he says is that if there were not in Israel, we would have to invent one to make sure our interests were preserved. I'll tell you, here's the definition of Zionism. Comes from a slide from my last presentation you can see at desertsagepodcast.com. Sorry, it's cut off here. Here's a definition you probably never heard of. You've been given the religious one, the return, the right to return, all of that. You've been given that one. That's the religious Jewish supremacist Zionism. There's the political one as well. Zionism is a racist and settler colonialist movement which opportunistically co-opts aspects of Judaism in an attempt to justify its criminal practices of apartheid and genocide of indigenous Palestinians. White supremacy is dominant within Israeli society, which privileges white-skinned Ashkenazi Jews at the expense of dark-skinned African Jews, Sephardic, and Mizrahi Jews, as well as African refugees.
Thank you, Mr. Beffert.
I'll be back.
I'm sure you will. Okay, Don Martin, and then James Jones, and then Jennifer Esposito.
Good morning, Chairman and Board. My name's Don Martin. I live in Kingman. I'm coming up here today because I just received some information that I think is kind of important. It concerns the constant assault on public lands by the Biden administration and doing these crazy solar and wind projects. I just learned that out near Red Lake, that there's been 2 applications submitted, one for 5,000 acres for solar and another for 22,000 acres for wind. This is an application only at this point, but it just shows the continuing onslaught by the Biden administration to defile our western public lands. And we've got a fight on our hands up at White Hill, but this should put us all on notice too, that this fight is not going to just be in one area or one district. White Hills is in District 4. These projects that are being submitted are in Travis's district, and I know he's going to get on top of this. The whole thing is, we as a county are recognizing what is going on. But it's unfortunate because it seems like the rest of America is not. I've been reading all these reports, and people are glorifying this business that the BLM does about shortcutting the process, where it takes the voice out of the common person. It takes the voice out of counties like Mojave County. It just overrides everything, and a lot of people are buying into it, and they're saying, hey, this is what we need. Out there at Red Lake, it's right there on the where the power lines are. Those, what's 25,000 square acres? Are you kidding me? That's good. That defaces Mojave County. It lowers our values, I think, both visually to people that come out here. When I drive down Stockton Hill Road, I don't want to see 5,000 acres of solar panels, and I sure as heck don't want to see 25,000 acres or 22,000 acres, which, if the math is right, encompasses 34 square miles of wind generators out there. So it behooves us and Mojave County to stay on top of these things, because Biden is offering all of these shortcuts to these companies, and they're just filing like crazy in our county. They seem to think we're just going to roll over and play dead while they try to defile our western landscape. Thank you.
Okay, Jennifer? Oh, I'm sorry, James Jones, yeah. And then Jennifer Esposito.
There you go. Good morning, Board of Supervisors. My name is James Jones, the Sovereign of Mojave County. Today I'd like to speak to you about the foreign trade zones. On or about November 20th, 2023, this board approved a foreign trade zone. This board just approved a $70,000 payment for the trade zone consultant. Now, thinking that this was an incentive to possibly get some kind of return for the county, the Board of Supervisors just put the cart before the horse. Foreign trade zones are part of the globalist agenda, and they're not good for America workers. By passing the foreign trade zone, this board now shows its true colors as globalist and not as America First. The America First Committee firmly believes that the interest of the American people should always come first. We advocate for the policy that prioritizes the well-being of all citizens over any international obligations. By embracing a philosophy of self-reliance and independence, we seek to protect the sovereignty of our great nation. Economic protectionism is our focus. In the quest for national prosperity, the America First Committee staunchly advocates for economic protectionism. What is the potential benefit and implications for the America First community? By developing into the realms of anti-globalization and trade policy, we aim to shed light on how economic protectionism can serve as a blueprint for a prosperous America. It's a basic fact that by implementing strategic policies such as tariffs, quotas, and subsidies, a nation can shield its economy, from unfair competition, preserve jobs, and promote self-sufficiency. The America First Committee believes that such measures are crucial to safeguarding America's economic interest and fostering a thriving, self-reliant nation. Long live the Republic, if you can keep it.
Thank you very much, sir. Jennifer Esposito.
Jennifer Esposito, candidate for District 4 County Supervisor, Kingman. At the last call to the public, I made some comments and there was some rebuttal, which is allowed. But I just want to talk about decorum in general of elected officials, because decorum is not just when you're up there or maybe I'm over here. It also extends to the way that people behave when they're not at this meeting. When you're an elected official, the rules are just a little bit different. I put something up here on the screen. I don't know if you can read it, but I'll read it for you if you can't. One of the things that was said last time was Supervisor Lingenfelter denied stating that Supervisor Gould needed to be removed and replaced. But just know this, Travis, I have people at your events. Why? Because I care about Kingman and it's split between our districts. But you lie, and it comes easy to you. You know, at the very first event in Valley Vista, you said, I will not engage in personal attacks. And then you went on to engage in one of the most vile, disgusting personal attacks in posts that you made online about your opponent. And it was childish, it was disgusting, it was unfounded, and it was unprofessional. You have repeatedly crawled down into the mud and engaged in attacks on me, most recently. What was it, yesterday, the day before, when I pointed out that you had taken a very popular meme right now, and you cut the dialogue out and put it in your own post, which falsely made it look like the comment was attributed to you. And I said that you had engaged in plagiarism in the past, which is not my opinion. It was in the newspaper. There's been plenty of documented snarkiness, comments, dissensions in this board that have been documented in the newspaper and witnessed by all of us. But what you said was, I've got better things to do with my Sunday than squabble online with a loser like you. Go play with your pig. I was playing with Munchkin, actually, and I said I'm already spending some time with Munchkin, actually, but I can also multitask. Then you pointed out that I had been arrested in Quartzsite. I'm actually rather proud of that. And I responded, politically motivated lawfare, exactly like what's being done to Trump. Represented myself in court and acquitted or charges dismissed on all counts. I eat lawyers for lunch. And I posted where the La Paz County attorney had asked that the police chief and the town be investigated for trying to falsely target people politically. And then you said, of course, you're brilliant, living in a broken down trailer and everything is always someone else's fault. I said, I live in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, thanks. Retired early with no debt, 10 acres of land and a lot of hard assets. I'm pretty brilliant, come to think of it. You said, not according to public records, you're bullshit.
Enough. Talk about decorum, little decorum. All right, last but not least, we have Jeannie Kench. I see you signed up twice, so there are different topics, so I will give you 5 minutes.
Chairman, board, thank you very much, and thank you for the extra time. I got 2 hats today. My first hat is as your assessor. Today's Mojave Minutes is about the success of Mojave County's first deed fraud class called Steal a House with a Stroke of a Pen. Attendees came from all over the state. It was on Thursday, right here in this room. County partners such as assessors, recorders, sheriff, deputies, and even an attorney. The class was complete with the stories of different types of fraud and how we can combat this newly hatched theft. It was clear that the education is the key to understanding how this theft is successful. The need to be educated was the reason the Mojave County Assessor's Office hosted this class. We had some impressive instructors, Jesse Wolnick, attorney and deed fraud expert, and Don Carroll, CFE criminal investigator for the Attorney General's Office. Their experiences and commitment to finding solutions made this deed fraud class eye-opening for everyone in attendance. This awesome training helps educate about deed fraud, what to look for and how it works. The more we are educated as county employees or elected officials, the better we are at serving all our property owners in our respective counties for better security of future property conveyances. When we find the vulnerabilities in our statutes, the next step is to attempt some fixes with the legislature. Representative John Gillette attempted a couple of times this year, but with the lack of education is why we didn't move forward. Hopefully classes like this will help with this concern. I was thrilled to have fellow assessor Maricopa County Eddie Cook and his chief deputy Carly Friday in attendance. And a shout out to our chief deputy Brett McKee for agreeing with the need for the training and organizing the event. Thank you. Now I'm going to put my chairman hat on for the GOP. In regards to Trump's horrible conviction on Thursday, I have quotes from some of our esteemed elected officials. I completely disagree with the shameful verdict. This trial has been a sham from the beginning, and while I am angry with the decision, I am not at all surprised by the Democrats' actions and efforts to silence and destroy their greatest political opponent and threat. Our justice system is lost, and this verdict will not withstand an appeal. Paul Gosar, U.S. Congressman. The blatant breakdown and violations of rights enshrined in our Constitution is a judicial tragedy. That political persecution show trial is a travesty to the rule of law, and everyone needs to wake up and take notice of what it truly is, a grab of power and intimidation. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Lord Acton, by Sonny Borelli, Arizona Senator, LD 30. The leftist Democrat sham trial with a scripted and predicted outcome will be overturned. America has joined the list of banana republics where a former president can be convicted for nothing, yet being supported by over half the country. If the Democrats continue this path, it will end in a second civil war and destruction of America. John Gillette, Arizona House of Representatives, LD 30. What they just did to President Trump is a disgrace. This is what happens in corrupt third world countries, not the United States of America. I hope every American now understands why they need to vote for Donald Trump in November and save America. Leo Biasucci, Arizona House of Representatives, LD 30. Our republic is dead. It is up to us to resurrect it. Jeannie Kench, Chairman of the Mojave County GOP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else? I see none, so I'm going to close the call to public. Any response from the board on anything?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
the only comment that I would make is I did share a meme basically saying that after the verdict, the Trump verdict, you didn't see conservatives running around rioting and burning down buildings. We actually raised over $50 million. One of the speakers that spoke against me today took exception to that, and I would just say to her response, there were several versions of that same meme available on the public internet. The one that I would cite that maybe you haven't seen is by prominent conservative commentator David Harris Jr. There's several of them out there. People share memes. There was no plagiarism. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to the consent agenda. Items 5 through 41 will be voted in one motion unless we have anything that we want to take out. Supervisor Johnson.
Madam Chair, I'm pulling 41. It'll either be brought back later or not. Also, item number 26.
26. Okay. Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Number 23.
Number 23. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Madam Chair, nothing this morning.
Excuse me?
Nothing this morning, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bishop?
Nothing.
Okay. I need a motion to approve consent agenda items 5 through 41 minus 23, 26, and 41.
So made.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 23 is to approve the continued utilization of MMCAP-infused cooperative contract for pharmaceuticals and vaccines. Supervisor Gould?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I was just wondering if staff could give me an explanation of this program.
No.
Apparently not.
Nothing? Anyone online?
Madam Chair, board
Yeah.
members, I would expect Melissa Palmer to be on the
Is she
call
on?
and to jump in. Melissa, are you there?
There she is.
Good morning, supervisors. The program is for our vaccines for adults and vaccines for children. So we purchase vaccines for both of these programs under this cooperative agreement. The adult vaccines are purchased the measles, mumps, and rubella, and varicella, or chickenpox. And then for children, the HIV, HPV, MMR, pneumococcal, then there's the DTaP and the hepatitis B, rotavirus, and varicella for this particular contract. And this is where we have our vaccine clinics for children, and then we also do vaccines for adults.
So the COVID vaccine and the flu vaccine don't come through this program?
Not through this program, no.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Okay, motion? Oh, okay. I need a motion.
Motion to approve.
I need a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Number 26, approve the award and sign contract number 24B10, the Mojave County Sheriff's Substation, Lake Havasu City tenant improvement to Palmieri Construction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess my question to the county manager is, maybe I'm reading this diagram wrong, but I see no facility for holding prisoners. I see no jail there or anything. Is that an oversight on my part, or do we not hold prisoners at this substation?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Johnson, I would like for the Sheriff's Department or his Chief Deputy to answer this question. It's a great question. I don't have an answer because I'm not intimately familiar with the operation of the Sheriff Department, where they hold prisoners and transport.
What year was that?
Thank you.
Sounds like the sheriff.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Okay, we got Sheriff.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisors, Supervisor Johnson. You're correct in your understanding of the diagram. We, I think it was 2014, had to close down our ancillary substations as a result of our insurance carrier's unwillingness to continue based on issues that occurred prior to that. We are going to have temporary holding, no overnight holding, but there will be temporary holding in the facility, if that answers your question. You don't have trustees at the station like to do cleanup and stuff? Madam Chair, Supervisor Johnson, no, that went away over 10 years ago. Again, it was an insurance issue. It's something that we're not bringing back. Until we can get the staffing in the main jail, it wouldn't be operational in any event. We do have over 7,000 square foot in the facility that is not going to be built out. Therefore, if something changes in the future and we wish to go down that road with approval from ASIP, we can certainly do that. Thank you. That's the only question I had.
Okay. You want to make a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. 41 is pulled for a future meeting. Off to public hearings. This is from Development Services. I'm going to open the public hearing. Discussion and possible action to approve the adoption of BOS Resolution 2024, which is a 129, which is a rezone. And I do have some people signed up to speak. I got quite a few people signed up to speak. First up is Nick Benson and then Marcia Anderson, both opposed. Is Mr. Benson here? If you can give your name and your address when you're up here, I'd be most appreciative.
Thank you, Supervisors. My name is Nick Benson. I live at 10700 North Campolindo Lane, Rancho Mountain Vistas Ranchos. I'm not a very good public speaker. When I moved to Kingman area 6 years ago, I first looked in Golden Valley, and there was something about the neighborhood I didn't like. My real estate agent suggested, well, I could talk to the neighbors, maybe get it changed. I said, no, that's not a good idea. It's not up to the neighborhood to accommodate me. It's up to me to assimilate into the neighborhood, not the other way around. I have a petition here, almost 3 pages long, of people that oppose this hotel, restaurant, bar, that from people who actually live in Mountain Vistas Ranches, not Hackberry, Kingman proper, or wherever else they got their support from. There are a few in Mountain Vista Ranches that are for it, but the clear majority are against it. I have an email from January 5th from the planning lady, Peggy Clemens, who said that their initial proposal for this very same project without the hotel would be denied because you don't do spot zoning. Now they add a zone, now they add a hotel and say, well, spot zoning is okay. I don't understand why this is different now. Why did spot zoning for one, but spot zoning is okay for the other? At the May 8th meeting, Mrs. Saney was asked, how big a hotel do you plan on putting in, if it really is a hotel? It's 3 or 4 rooms. Well, okay, but which is it, 3 or 4? That tells me that there's been no plans drawn up. There's no idea what it's really going to be. I think they're asking you to vote on something that you vote for it to find out what's really in it. That sure sounds familiar. Mrs. Saney also stated that those in the area are just afraid of change. No, we're not afraid of change. We moved there to get away from people telling us what's better for us and what's good for us in our neighborhood. We don't want the development. We don't want it developed out there. We are happy the way our life is. We're living our dreams, and I'm happy that she would like a dream of her own, but do it in an area where it's welcome. It's not welcome here. We should not have to change our dreams to accommodate her dream. Where will this is a $1 million project when you add in all the cost, and it's going to be a tea house. That's an awful lot of cups of tea. Something tells me there's more to her plan than meets the eye. And if there's no written plans for it, what's really in it? We don't know. You don't know. How can you approve a project when you don't really know what's in it? Is it going to be a hotel, a motel, future RV park? What guarantee do we have that down the road, after you open the floodgates?
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Marcia Anderson and then Jenny Sheldon. And then after that, Mr. Gordon Spivey.
Good morning, Supervisors and Madam Chairman. And it just fell apart.
Oh, no.
I'm here to oppose the motel, the tea house, and whatever else she has planned. This is a residential...
I'm sorry, can you give your name and address, please?
I didn't. Marcia Anderson, 10855 North Monet. I'm on the corner of Brooks and Monet. I'm a half a mile from this proposed hotel, tea room. I don't know what she's got in mind. I've got a direct shot at it. But this is our home. This is a residential neighborhood. It's not for commercial. There's, the lots are already sold to regular people. And I would just respectfully ask that you would turn this down. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jenny Sheldon, then Mr. Gordon Spivey. And if you can, when you hear your name, if you can kind of make your way down, because we have quite a few people who want to speak. And then Lee Van Landingham.
Good morning. Jenny Sheldon, 7220 East Brooks Boulevard. I'm right off of the Brooks, right off the drive, down the road from the proposed commercial zoning. I ask that you not. I moved out there 11 years ago with my animals and my family. We enjoy it. It's a ranch area. And I'm not sure that I understand, and it sounds like the others don't understand either, what exactly is being proposed with a motel room or a tea room. We have our wineries. We love the wineries. I mean, they could serve tea at the wineries. We support our wineries, but I'm not really sure what's involved with the motel tea restaurant. I am getting increased traffic already. In fact, I could use speed bumps already. So the growth concerns me. I like my ranch. I like the trails. I ride my horse right out from my driveway. I live the dream right now. I'd like to keep it that way. I hope you understand.
Thank you. Mr. Spivey?
My name's Gordon Spivey. I live at 10828 North Taos Road. And where they're talking about putting up this motel, it's less than 1/10 of a mile from my gate, which I find very opposing. I don't need to have all these commercial things brought in on top of us and pushed into our face and letting them overrun our whole community that we have out there. It took us a long time to find a place like what we have. Quiet, open, place where we can ride our horses out amongst Mother Nature and have our freedom. We are looking to keep what we have today. That's why we fought so hard and looked so hard to find a place like this. It took a long time to find it. Now, it's like they're trying to take all this away from us. One person against a whole community. I find that very appalling. I am very against this, 100%. I think I've had my piece. I will let you go to the next.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Van Landingham, and then John Westholder.
My name is Lee Van Landingham, 10772 North House Road, Kingman Valley Vista. And I am also in opposition to this planned rezone for pretty much the same reasons as have been stated in the last 3 or 4 speakers. We feel that it will change the character of the neighborhood if we have any further commercial development out there. And my wife, Clara Casby, and I own 2 properties there on Taos Road. And as Gordon stated, we're about 1/10 of a mile away, maybe not even that much, from where this development would be on Brook Boulevard. And we just feel that it's going to completely change the feel of the neighborhood, the character of the neighborhood. So Claire and I are both strongly opposed to this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Westholder, and then Bill Holland, Kristen Avila, and then the applicant, and Senni. I don't know if I'm pronouncing
Madam
that.
Chairman, Board of Supervisors, John Westholder, 10103 North Black Boot Drive in Val Vista. I'm just here to kind of express my concerns over this passing. I do sit on the board of directors at Val Vista, but as far as the board goes, we pretty much have a 50-50 split as far as the community is concerned. Some people do find it interesting. Others are very concerned. We do have an approval of different entrances to access this, but nothing has been done to it. Again, we're putting the horse before the cart. The roads are getting torn up out there. I do see that they've been oil sealed, and probably a quarter of it has been cut with grass, and then they disappeared. It's kind of an area that's really going to need to grow eventually, and I understand that. But I ask that you do it correctly, not just putting one person, one situation over the rest of the community. That concerns me very much. We've got one individual that has applied for this application 2 different times, and each time they apply for it, they change the wording. It's still the same thing. We have no idea what's going out there, except for a hacienda. It'd be nice to know what's happening beforehand. I just ask that you would reconsider. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but maybe not now. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, sir. I believe we will be hearing from the applicant, and so we'll be getting some information about that. Okay, Bill Holland, and then Kristen Avila.
Good morning, supervisors. My first attendance here at a
Your
board
name and
meeting.
address, please.
I'm sorry. Bill Holland. I live at 10211 Hidden Springs Drive in Hackberry. Same general vicinity, but a bit away. In any event, I don't necessarily agree that it hasn't been stated that what this will be or what's wanted. But let me just say right up front, I am in favor of this development. The one thing that is a constant is change. Change happens every day, happens for a myriad of reasons. And to say that this project doesn't conform with other uses in the community isn't accurate. There's wineries in the area. It sounds to me like there's a fear of the unknown. And yet, instead of being negative and coarse with the folks that are proposing this, maybe a dialogue of what exactly it is that they're wanting to put out there. I, for one, love to take my wife out for dinner occasionally, and I think this would give an opportunity for that. There's other things that this project will be able to provide for the wineries and other interests in that area. And it's just unfortunate that there is always a bit of negativity. But then I guess that's the way of the world today. You folks have had to sit up here and listen to a ton of negativity. I've been where you sit, not at a county level, but at a city level. And I understand how difficult what you're doing is. You have my thanks and respect. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to sit up there and take the slings and arrows. Hang in there. It doesn't get any better, but you get a little bit thick. Your skin gets a little bit thick. So just stay the course. Hang in there. Thank you for your service. And for myself and my wife, what you do is appreciated. Please consider approval of this project and then come out and visit. Travis, this is your district. Come on out. Okay? And if not there, come on out to our place. We'll barbecue. Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much. Kristen Avila, did I say your name right? Okay.
And my name is Kristen Avila. I live at 10688 North Benjamin Road in Kingman in the Mountain Vista second phase. I would like to just be here to say that I'm in support of this project. I think it would benefit the area of Valley Vista. Thank you.
Thank you. And now the applicant, Ann Senni, and maybe she can answer some of the questions that were posed.
Good morning, Chairman, board members. Thank you for the opportunity. The meeting,
Excuse me, the name and address.
sorry,
please.
Ancini, 4395 North Skylark, Kingman, 86409. Our rezone request to CRE, commercial recreational, does meet the definition in accordance with written zoning guidelines, with the addition of a few rooms of lodging, and we're looking at 4 right now because that's what we can afford. And really don't want to be any bigger as far as lodging goes, simply because we want to focus on the restaurant. And yeah, there's some disparaging remarks about tea, but I plan to have some tea converts to afternoon tea. It's an experience that everybody should be able to have. A place with a few rooms of lodging with an upscale dining room and tea room will enhance the area with Mojave County's wineries for residents and visitors alike. We've engaged with a lot of visitors to the wineries, and they all express support for something like this. The positive change will improve the desirability of our area. We are willing to provide another dining option, offering menu items that are not otherwise available locally. In addition, we intend to support other local small businesses as much as we can, because a rising tide floats all boats. There are 2 wineries that are open and fully functioning, making products enjoyed by residents and sought out by travelers passing through our region. Another winery is waiting for the right partnership or buyer to reopen, and a 4th is on the verge of opening its tasting room. Delivery of appetizers and light meals to the wineries from our property will enhance everyone's experience. Lodging with an upscale restaurant is one of the most compatible businesses with wineries. The parcel where we want to build, operate, and live is 5.5 acres in Mountain Vista Ranches. Everybody in that area has 5 or more acres, as is mandated for that area. How we conduct our small business will have minimal impact on nearby residents and neighbors who live farther away. Just a point, Antares Road is well over 3/4 of a mile away. To conclude, we believe that now is the right time and our location is the right place. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much. Okay, so if there's anybody else, we're still in the public hearing.
Hi, good morning, Supervisors. My name is Tina Westholder. I live at 1010-3 North Black Boot Drive in Kingman, Arizona. And I understand that change is coming and there's really a progression that eventually happens. But I just want to share a quick little story. I came from an area called Sherry Valley, kind of like the same area that this rezoning is going to be done. So what literally happened is that in that Cherry Valley area in California, we moved there because of the country atmosphere. We have pastures of cows, pastures of horses, a lot of mountains, a lot of hills. Well, same thing happened in our vicinity. They changed the commercial zoning. And all of a sudden now, we still have friends out there, it's now a cluster mess. It opened a Pandora box. They put in a truck hub there. They had a bunch of builders from Orange County disrupt where it was 2.5 acres. They have what I call monopoly homes now. They're all clustered and stuck together. But they said they only wanted to change for just one particular person so that they can have a little winery, nothing more. But it opened a Pandora box, and then it just completely changed. We had to sell our home. We moved out here, and we love it. But the one biggest concern that I have and my surrounding neighbors is the fact that we live 1 block from Conchal Drive, and we see, sitting on our front porch, traffic,
People don't understand that it's 30 miles. We see RVs constantly going really fast, semi-trucks going really fast into the mountain residents. What's going to happen? We're going to have more traffic. We have children. We even had a cow on the golf course the other day that escaped from the mountain residence area. People that don't live in our area that come through as travelers don't pay attention to the speed limit. And that's my biggest concern. And I just ask that you just think about the residents. I mean, aren't you for the people? You know, just asking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing. Any comments or questions from the board?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if we could have either Mr. Hunt or Mr. Hultree come down from Development Services Department, please. Good morning, Mr. Hultree.
Morning.
So I appreciate all of the speakers that we've heard from today on both sides of this. And from what I'm really getting from all of it is uncertainty with not only the current zoning of what this will be, but if they sell or if, you know, uncertainty is really the chief concern that I'm hearing. When is the general plan community meeting date out in this area, or has it already gone?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Lingenfelter, this community meeting has not already happened. I believe it is more towards July, or I think it's August.
In August
or September, one of those 2 months.
Well, the reason I asked that question, and hopefully, you know, if there's anything that my office, the District 1 office, can do to help publicize and advertise that public meeting and get that out, I think it's very important to take that opportunity as we're continuing to publish and advertise these public meetings. Mojave County is going through a very comprehensive revision to its 10-year general plan, and these public meetings, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Hultree, they're to get that public input to say, okay, for this area plan within our general plan, this is what we envision for our area for the next decade. And so I'd like to see as many of those folks out there participating in that. I'd like to sit in on that as well. That was my first question. Second question is, there's some concern over the definition of hotel. And my question to you in Development Services Department is, under our guidelines, that word seems very open-ended. What's the definition of a hotel under our Mojave County Development Services rules? Is it 4 rooms? Is it 3 rooms, 2 rooms? Can 1 room be classified as a hotel? What's the definition?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Lingenfelter, you're correct. It is quite open as far as what a hotel is. It could be 100 rooms, it could be as low as 2 rooms. I think 1 room would not count as a hotel. Probably not even 2 rooms. That might just be a duplex. But when you're getting into more than 3 or 4, then it becomes that hotel. Certainly, the Board of Supervisors would have the ability in this rezone, if they wanted to limit it to a certain number. That is something that we could put in the resolution.
So I guess I'm still trying to nail down exactly how to categorize it in my head. So if you have 2 connected units, it's a duplex. If you have 3 connected units, it's a triplex. How do we get to what constitutes, how do you get from a triplex to calling something a hotel?
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. It's the length of stay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor Gould. The length of stay. Thank you very much. So I'm wondering, and this question will be to the applicant later, but what I'm thinking is I want to make sure that we try to balance everybody's concerns here. My question is, how many businesses on Brooks currently have this same CRE zone?
How many,
How many businesses on Brooks Boulevard have this current, what they're going for, CRE?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Lingenfelter, I don't believe any businesses on Brooks currently have it, but in the vicinity, I'll pull up a map here.
Let me clarify my question. What is the zoning of Stetson Winery? What is the zoning of Sella Winery? What is the zoning of the other wine growers on that road?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Lingenfelter, Stetson Winery has the green zoning, which is the CRE zoning, what is being applied for today. That was given quite some time ago. The other wineries that are in the vicinity currently have a special use permit. They're able to achieve what we were looking for with just the special use permit, because it is an agricultural use on their property, but adding just the tasting room required just the special use permit. There was a CRE zone that, if you can see on the map, that's just a little bit further out. This was on today's agenda. I believe it belongs to the applicant of this current item, and it was rescinded. This was one that was done quite some time ago as well for the bed and breakfast, but it didn't meet the conditions of approval, so that was on for rescission today. But to answer your question, the only one that has the CRE zoning is the Stetson Winery.
And that was the one that went first, and then the others that came in, they worked with staff, and staff said, you may not have to go to that length, you just get a special use permit. Is that what
That's
happened?
correct, yeah.
Okay. My last question for you would be, in an attempt to try to balance everybody's concerns and to really try to battle this uncertainty that is sort of out there right now with, if this zoning goes in, what happens if it's sold, what happens, would it be possible to add conditions as far as, this shall only be for a tea house, or the maximum rooms that you can have is 3 or 4? Is that something conditions that I could offer up?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Lingenfelter, absolutely. With the previous zoning that was presented on this parcel, it allowed for quite a bit of different types of uses on the site, including a mechanic shop or retail. Staff was not in support of that. The current zoning that is proposed, the CRE zoning, is meant for these rural areas and does not have all those other listed commercial uses. With the Board of Supervisors, you are able to limit it to exactly just what they're asking for, the tea room, the hotel, with also putting limits on how many rooms.
Thank you. Madam Chair?
Yes.
Those are the only questions I have for Scott. If any of the other board members have questions for him, I'd like to have questions for the applicant.
Anyone have any questions for Mr. Holtry? No, apparently not.
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to ask the applicant to come back up, please. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, listening to Mr. Holtry and his responses at the podium today, would you have any problem with me making a motion that would include conditions that this is only going to be for a tea house? That's the first condition that I would ask, is that I would make a condition that if this is granted, that this would only be for a tea house, to try to eliminate some of the uncertainty that has been communicated this morning.
Tea house as opposed to a 30-seat.
Well, whatever you want to do a tea house right now, correct?
In conjunction with a dining room.
And a dining room. So if I was just to say the condition would be, it can only be that. Does that produce any heartburn for you?
No, that would be fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then let me ask you about the number of rooms.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned that you wanted 4 rooms.
I have to.
Can you say how you came up with that number? Can it be 3 rooms?
It could be. It could be 3.
Maximum of 3?
Sure, we could do that. I have to caveat that we do plan to live on the property as well, so there would be owner's quarters incorporated into the building.
Okay, thank you. Those are my only questions, Madam Chair.
Okay, any other questions for the applicant? Supervisor Bishop? Nope. Okay.
Madam Chair, again, I just would like to thank everybody from this area that actually lives in this area for coming here, for being a part of the process, for giving your comments. I'm going to make a motion that tries to balance the best that I possibly can, and that removes as much of the uncertainty as we can. But I'd like to make a motion to approve the adoption of BOS Resolution number 2024-129 with the conditions added that this can only be for a tea house and restaurant in perpetuity. And if they wanted to go for something else, that they would have to go back through a process to do that. And that there would be a maximum number of rooms allowed, 3 instead of 4. And that's it. And that's the motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion?
I don't know that you addressed the applicant's concern. I think it would be better if you said 1 owner occupied and 3. I think you're limiting them to 2, unless that you're...
Supervisor Johnson, no, I will revise to make sure that it's crystal clear that the condition would be 1 owner occupied and 3 rooms, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay. So I believe we have the motion. Anyone need it to be read back?
Nope, I seconded it.
Okay, so we have a motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you all.
On to number 43 has been pulled. 44, I'm going to open the public hearing. Discussion and possible action to approve the adoption of BOS Resolution 2024-09. Amend the Mojave County zoning ordinance, sign ordinance to reestablish I-15 as a designated sign-free area to prohibit future billboards along I-15. Okay, I don't have anybody signed up to speak on this. Does anybody want to speak? Anyone? I'm going to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thanks for the walk. Number 45, I'm going to open the public hearing. Discussion and possible action to approve the adoption of BOS Resolution 2024-10, amendment to the Mojave County zoning ordinance, Section 12.2 Energy Overlay, to amend the allowed location requirements for renewable energy projects in Mojave County. This was approved by the commission by unanimous vote. We do have a few people signed up for 45. John Gall.
Thank you, Chairman Angus. Supervisors, John Gall, 2409 Rica Drive, Kingman, Arizona, owner of Arizona Land and Water Resources, LLC. I'm here to speak in support of the special use permit application that staff has done. Planning and zoning looked at this on 2 occasions. On the first occasion, they referred it back to staff for a more detailed review. Mr. Holtry and Mr. Gunnarsson did an excellent job of having stakeholder input to come up with the new criteria, which in the special use permit is pretty erroneous on the developer to provide quite a bit of detailed information in that process, and gives the county and the board a tremendous amount of latitude to deny those applications. But for example, for a grading plan to submit to the county on a large solar project would cost in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So the special use permit will take the wheat from the chaff out and eliminate the speculators and have only the serious developers that have a viable project to go forward. So I'd like to ask the board to please approve as it's written. Thank you.
Okay. Next up, John Martell, and then Don Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Supervisors. John Martell, Mojave Electric, 1999 in Arena Drive, Bullhead City. I also want to thank county staff for working with the stakeholders on all this. Mojave Electric is here to support this resolution as written as well. I really want to call out the one section where the staff really helped us was the on-site generation language changed, helped us to allow the residential and commercial members to construct solar on their properties. The old language was net metering, which had kind of gone to a thing of the past. So Mojave Electric does support this, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. Mr. Martin?
Don Martin, Kingman, Arizona. I read this over, and when it originally was proposed, there was a 1 mile buffer zone out there. And then my understanding is now that it's been changed to a 1/4 mile for a buffer zone. Thing is about these solar projects, I don't know about you folks, but I don't want a sea of solar panels 440 yards from my front door. A mile, I think, is reasonable. There's probably plenty of properties out there that can accommodate that. But as this process has went on, I seen that it got changed, and I wondered, why did they change it from a mile to a 1/4 mile buffer? I think we've seen in a lot of past discussions about these projects, about neighborhoods being downwind from these kind of things. And that does concern me, because I really think that especially areas where people have already bought homes, developed homes, and are living there, and then somebody comes in and buys a square mile or 5 miles, and all of a sudden they want to put in 5,000 solar panels in there. That just takes away from the people that have already been there, that have established there, and have identified their community values. And I just think that cutting that down from a mile to a 1/4 mile, I don't think it should happen. I think the mile buffer was good, and I would support that, but I surely would urge you to look closely at that 1/4 mile and think about it. Would you want 5,000 solar panels a 1/4 mile from your front door? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Come on down.
Thank you, Jennifer Esposito, Kingman. First of all, I object to the phrase renewable energy, because there's nothing renewable about these kinds of projects. Also, it only says you can't have hydrogen. However, I'd like to point out that a lot of these commercial projects, depending on the type of project, can be very high water use. I agree with removing the e-energy overlay. I do not agree with putting it in the other zoning. I think that no one is entitled to a rezone. When you buy your property, you have all the property rights that come with it under the zoning under which you purchased it. I think we need to get rid of this altogether, because we already have more than enough of these so-called green energy renewable projects. Also, on page 5 of the backup documents, it says, whereas in addition, no solar panels, wind turbines, or other generative units or battery storage will be allowed within 100 feet of neighboring residentially zoned property. 100 feet. Okay, 100 feet. Please give me a break. When we're talking about stakeholders, the only stakeholders that staff was concerned with were the stakeholders who stood to profit from these projects. So I would also, since we now know, we can approve things, but we can put conditions on them. One of the conditions I would like to see is that if we're going to add new commercial so-called green energy renewable projects, that they would be required to do an environmental impact study through the Arizona, not the federal government, but the Arizona Fish and Game Department, to determine whether or not they're disrupting any habitat for Gila monsters, burrowing owls, desert tortoises. Some of these projects can be quite destructive of the natural environment. I fully support rooftop solar. Most of these projects send the energy to California. We don't really benefit from them. What we do is we lose our rural way of life. We lose the visual impact of the desert habitat that we can never get back. These, as I said, these projects aren't really renewable. Solar panels deteriorate rather quickly. If you've driven through Palm Springs, you should count the number of wind turbines laying in pieces on the ground. It's just a mess. And I think we've allowed more than enough of this in Mojave County. let them go do it somewhere else. Nobody has a right to a rezone. So just take it completely off the menu. Just say, thank you, we have enough. Please do it somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public hearing. Board?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like staff to give us a presentation on how this works for ourselves and for the public.
Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity. Staff was tasked with revising the ordinance for energy projects within Mojave County. Previously, we had the energy overlay, which allowed basically any applicant to come in and apply for a rezone on any parcel within Mojave County to allow for an energy project. Also, you could apply through a special use permit. One would be more permanent, the other one would be more temporary as far as when you could construct. With that, we received quite a few applications in for solar projects. The Board of Supervisors enacted the moratorium quite some time ago, and actually, I believe the moratorium is up. Today would be the 231st day of the moratorium, and it was a 240-day moratorium on the energy overlay zone. With that, staff looked into all the other counties within Mojave County or within Arizona, other jurisdictions. We looked into the BLM as well and what their processes were. One of the main things that we saw with most of the counties is that a lot of them allow for these type of projects outright in their industrial zones. So that would be our first change, was to essentially remove the energy overlay zone. So there is no more the ability to apply for a overlay zone anywhere in the county. You have to, you could only have an energy project within the industrial zone. So your MX, which is our heavy industrial, or our M2, which is just general manufacturing. With that, we also wanted to make sure that we carved out the large-scale water user type energy projects, which would be your hydrogen projects. Those do not count as an renewable energy project and would not be allowed outright in those industrial zones. But it is only allowed in the MX zone with a special use permit, according to the new proposed ordinance that's before you today. With that, staff found that that would be an acceptable, as far as moving the solar and the wind projects to the manufacturing areas where you would have refineries or power plants. It seemed to fit those type of locations outright without having to go through a process. We did still want to place a 100-foot buffer if an industrial zone is adjacent, which we do have several of them. We have industrial zones that are adjacent to residential zones. We wanted to make sure there was still a buffer of 100 feet from that industrial zone or the solar project and the residentially zoned property. Currently, if you have a manufacturing project like a refinery, a lot of times that setback is almost zero on that side yard setback, even if it is a residentially zoned property right next to it. But with the solar or wind projects, they would have to meet that 100-foot setback. Secondly, we wanted to make sure that the more rural parts of the county still had the opportunity to be able to apply for a energy project. With that, we wanted to allow for a special use permit. When staff first was looking into it, there isn't much research or other counties that allow buffers for these types of projects. So we looked at what our current requirements were for notification, which was 1 mile on a energy project. If you wanted to present an energy project in Mojave County, you had to notify everybody within 1 mile of that project, either by certified mail or posting in the paper. Most projects alluded to posting in the paper, so it didn't really get the notification out to those property owners. But that was the reasoning for staff's decision on setting that 1 mile buffer zone. After presenting this project to the Planning and Zoning Commission and hearing the utility companies and the solar developers' comments, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended that we meet with those developers and with the utility companies to come up with maybe a compromise. We sat down with the utility companies and the stakeholders and felt that the quarter mile could still suffice for a buffer zone as far as applying for these types of projects. So when outside of just developing in an industrial zone, if you're applying for a special use permit, you would need to at least have 1 quarter mile distance from any existing residents just to apply. That application still requires you to notify. We did change the language in the new ordinance. You now have to notify everybody within 1 mile. You can't just put it in the paper. You have to notify everybody within 1 mile. You also have to provide a report of the proposed water usage that you will be using for your project. And then that is presented to the Planning and Zoning Commission and then the Board of Supervisors. So the Board of Supervisors would still have ultimate decision-making whether or not the project should move forward. But just in terms of applying for that special use permit, if anybody is within that 1 quarter mile, then they wouldn't be able to apply. Other than that, I believe that those are the major changes. So essentially we'll be removing the energy overlay zone from our ordinance, and this would end the moratorium. If the board wants to continue the moratorium, then we would need to do that at this point. But as far as this ordinance is concerned, it would essentially remove the energy overlay zone, which is what the moratorium was for. Again, we are also open to the board's discretion if they feel a half mile or a mile is still relevant for applying for that special use permit. We're open to that as well. And I will take any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Questions? Do you have some, Supervisor Bishop?
I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say, Scott, that I appreciate you and staff putting the time into this research and coming up with a workable solution with careful planning and these regulations. I think will ensure that the solar developments can coexist with the communities and our natural landscape. So I think this is a really good compromise. I'm happy to see the moratorium ending today, and with that, I'll make a motion that we approve the amended ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion, but I believe there's further discussion. Supervisor Lingenfelter.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just have a few questions for Mr. Hultree. Thank you again for the work that all of you have done on this. I think this was well timed, as the Bureau of Reclamation, as we all know, they're going through and revising their own Western States solar plan at the same time that we're looking at shoring up our rules as well. We've already heard that there's going to be an attempt for thousands of acres of solar and wind on federally managed lands within Mojave County, so I'm not too concerned about us missing out on having projects here because we don't have the final say on those lands. But we have to look at them every day. I do have a little bit of a concern with 4B, where initially it was proposed to be a mile away from any residential homes down to a half a mile or a quarter mile. I, as one supervisor, would like to see that go back to a mile, or at least maybe 3/4 of a mile. That's just from one of us. The other thing that I wanted to ask is, when the BLM looks at these projects, they do a environmental impact statement. They do look at long-term impacts to the natural environment. And is that something that is required for us to partner with the state to do some sort of a state-level environmental review to look at impacts to tortoise habitat or things like that?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Lingenfelter, we did look into environmental impacts and the requirement of those. And speaking with our attorneys, we felt like if it's something that we're going to require on these types of projects, it would also be something that we would have to require on almost any project that came in as far as a large cold storage building or any other type of development, unless we wanted to specifically limit or say that, okay, anything over 80 acres development would require this impact statement, but to require it of one industry and not another was a concern.
I think my concern, and some of the concerns I've heard, is more of a geographic concern, where you have a cold storage warehouse, for instance. Yeah, it might be on 80 to 100 acres, but shoot, you look at like the Western Wind project up in the White Hills, and that's tens of thousands of acres. You look at one of the proposed wind projects that's currently being examined. They're doing testing right now up on the Arizona Strip, conveniently right next to the new National Monument. 70,000 acres. They're looking at that. So I mean, that's a huge geographic swath of land. I know that those are federally managed properties, but if you have something that's tens of thousands of acres, that could have an impact, I think, just logically on tortoise environment, or maybe the bighorn sheep that are in the area, or other species. I know if you go onto the Arizona Game and Fish website, they have a number of listed species that they track and vegetation that they track. We don't give that any consideration at all, as far as you're looking at a project that's going to be, 8,000 acres or something like that.
Yeah, Madam Chair, Supervisor Lingenfelter, we currently do not. And that's including any master plan that comes to the county. A lot of those master plans that come into the county are quite large as well and could meet that threshold. Again, if we're just doing a blanket, hey, everything requires a environmental impact statement, then that's something that we would have to require on everybody. But if we did want to set a limit of saying, okay, if anything over 40,000 acres or 50,000 acres or whatever it might be, that's something that we could look into. But then again, it wouldn't just be for energy projects. It would be for any type of development over that size.
So for a huge master planned community that's going to be another small little city, we don't even do that for them.
That's correct. We don't.
Okay. I understand. And then just to make sure I heard you right, 6B1, where it says no solar panels, wind turbines, generation units, battery storage shall be within 100 feet. Those are for areas that we currently have zoning right up against each other, industrial and residential, and there's going to be some sort of a buffer that's required. Is that right?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Lingenfelter, these would be general requirements for all energy projects. So current projects that have the approval of energy overlay would have to meet these standards, as well as any project that goes into an industrial type zone would have to meet those standards, as well as any project that is approved through a special use permit. That is correct.
Thank you. Well, it sounds like the state level EIS sort of concept is something that if it's addressed, it may need to be addressed in a more comprehensive way at another time. My only concern is one supervisor is just the distance away from. It went from a mile, went to a quarter mile. I'd love to see it either be a mile or 3/4 of a mile. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other comments? Yeah, Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So, Scott, what you're saying is that if it's a rezone, where we're rezoning residential land, that the equipment will only be 100 feet from other people's property.
Madam Chair, Supervisor Gould, currently the proposal before you is not to allow for any rezones. It would be a special use permit. So if they do apply for a special use permit and get approved, then the buffer from their property line to the adjacent property line, if the adjacent property line is residential, would it be 100? Yes.
100 feet.
Correct.
So they would have solar panels 100 feet from people's property.
From the
or whatever
residentially zoned
contraption
property.
they dream up.
Correct. Yeah, the residentially zoned property doesn't mean that there was, so in order to apply for that special use permit, there couldn't be a residence within a quarter mile, currently is what's being proposed. But when you go and develop the property with the solar panels, they couldn't go within 100 feet of their property line.
So if people were planning to build a home on a piece of property and somebody came along and wanted a special use permit to put a solar facility in, they would then have a solar facility equipment within 100 feet of the property that they were planning to build their dream home on?
That could be the case, yes.
I really don't see how this is any different than what we have now. Personally, I would just as soon limit these projects to MX and M2 zoning and not allow them to be special use permit where you're bringing them into somebody's neighborhood. These distances are too close. That currently you have a 25-foot setback between the front of your house and the street. For perspective. This puts, theoretically, a guy could be living, he would be influenced by the heat produced by that solar panel in his front yard. I can't support this as it's drafted. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I may make a comment. I would echo Supervisor Gould's comments, and if he were to make a motion of some sort this morning, I would probably second it.
Well, we do have a motion on the table.
Second. Sorry.
Wait. We have a motion to approve, and we have a second. Okay, any further discussion? Let's do a roll call vote.
Chairman Angus,
Yes.
on my motion, I would be open to amending it to B1. If we could have a discussion on how far to increase that 100-foot to, I may be open to amending my motion to increase that distance.
Okay, do we need to rescind the
Ask
motion?
me if I'll,
Oh, yeah, well, you got your second, you have to convince.
I'd rather take a shot at this one and then move on.
Oh, okay. So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
No. Okay, back to the drawing board.
Okay, Chairman Angus, let's try this again with increasing the distance on B1 from 100 foot to also a quarter of a mile. So it matches the other. Would that be workable, Scott?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Bishop, so I believe B1 is the
It's where it says no solar panels, wind turbines, etc., shall be located within 100 foot of a neighboring residentially zoned property.
so that would
Increase that from 100 foot to a quarter of a mile.
So essentially what that would mean is even on industrial, so these are general requirements for any type of development of energy projects. So even on existing, already zoned for solar or for energy projects, including if this goes through anything that is industrial zoned, that would mean that they would also have to be a quarter mile away from their property line. And
So would that be problematic?
I believe that would be problematic.
How would it be problematic?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Gould, if you have an acre or a parcel that's only 5 acres, you're not going to be able to reach a quarter mile from your property line to develop the solar
So it's
project.
only problematic depending on your point of view then. It's not problematic law.
I think depending on your lot size, it would be problematic, yeah. So it'd be so these would be applied generally to all parcels If it's industrial or if they go through the special use permit, they would have to have that 100-foot setback. But if you change that 100-foot setback to a quarter-mile setback from your property line, it would be any property, your entire property line. It would probably leave you with a lot of undevelopable area on your project if it is a smaller project, if you're looking at a smaller lot size.
So Scott, how much could we increase that for? Because obviously the board doesn't like your 100-foot proposal. How much can we increase that and still have a workable resolution here?
Madam Chair, Supervisor Bishop, I know on previous projects that have been approved or we had looked at being approved, 100 to 200 foot setback has been something that has been approved. What I would suggest, if we did want to move forward with changing this 100-foot setback, that it would be for the special use ones, the properties that get the special use permit, not necessarily the ones that are already zoned industrial. I believe it would create an inconsistency with having a refinery 5 feet from your property line, but you couldn't have solar panels 200 feet from your property line when it's zoned MX or M2. But I do know that in the past we've allowed for a buffering zone of up to 200 feet.
Okay, so if I made a motion to approve the amended ordinance as written with the exception of B1 being extended from 100 foot from a neighboring residential zone property to 200 foot. Let's try that motion and see if the board will accept that.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
How deep is this room we're in right now, Scott? You know, take a guess. 40, 50 feet most?
I'd say probably more than 50 feet, yeah.
And we're doubling that size to 100 foot. Now you want to double that to 200. Are we just telling businesses not to bother coming to Mojave County that, you know, we're going to have such rules and regulations for things that might not even occur, you know? That's all I have,
Madam Chair. If I may as well, the board still has all the discretion when it does come to the board for a special use permit. Property owners within 1 mile are going to be notified, as well as property owners within a half mile of any transmission line are going to be notified. They can come and voice their opinions, and the applicant is going to be required, with the new ordinance, they're going to be required to present a site plan prior to applying to the Planning and Zoning Commission and the Board of Supervisors. So they'll have to have a plan, preliminary plan ready for you to see what it's going to look like. They're also going to be required to have a water usage statement and any other agreements that they might need from any other entities prior to applying for this special use permit. And then ultimately the board still has that discretion. Okay, there's 5 people that came and opposed this this special use permit for this particular project, then the board has the discretion to not approve it. But if nobody comes, it's out in the middle of nowhere, there's a bunch of washes or something like that, and it's not going to be developed for residential, the board has that discretion to say, okay, this is a good location for those type of solar projects. And so this is just the 100-foot. We just wanted to make sure that any residentially zoned properties next to any existing projects or any industrial project or industrial zone properties still had a setback, because they currently don't have that setback.
Okay. So
Chairman, if I could just jump in real quick.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Holtree, we're trying to modify, it actually looks like it's 6B1, is that right? And the language that I'm looking at is no solar panels, wind turbines, or any other generating unit or battery storage shall be located within 100 feet of a neighboring residentially zoned property. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Attorney Espelin. That's correct.
Okay. So, I mean, I just don't understand how, if they made it to a quarter mile, let's just say that the quarter mile, how that would affect, because you said that would affect all things, but I don't read it that way. to me, if you made it a quarter mile here, it's no solar panels, wind turbines, or any other generating unit or battery storage shall be located within a quarter mile. I don't understand how it would affect all the other industrial things that you were talking about.
Madam Chair, Attorney Aspon, it wouldn't affect any of the industrial. It'd just be any project that wants to be located on an industrial zone property. Any solar project that wants to be located on an industrial zone property, they would have to have that 100-foot setback as well. Not the industrial use, other industrial uses.
Okay.
Just the solar, just the energy projects.
Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Lingenfelter.
If Supervisor Bishop would be willing to entertain changing that 100-foot under 6B1 to the quarter mile to, well, that still leaves it a quarter mile from any residences. I still don't know if I feel like I can support that. Sorry.
Well, reading the tea leaves here, do we need to kind of put it back to the planning and zoning and take what we said and see what else you can come up with?
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
Do we have a current motion on the floor?
Do we? Oh, I'm sorry. What's the motion? I'm sorry.
The motion was to change the 100-foot setback to 200 foot.
Okay, to 200.
Approve the amended motion as written with the exception of 6B1 being increased to a 200-foot distance.
Okay, and do we have a second for that? No second on that one? Well, I'll second it for discussion. So just to reiterate what you said earlier, it wouldn't change our usual process. Conditional use, people come, they do, we know we have a very active population here, and it would be sort of the same as we've done before. So if it is something egregious or something, it still would have to come before the Board of Supervisors.
Madam Chair, that's correct. Any project for a special use permit that's not an industrial zone would still need to come to the Board of Supervisors, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and have all the notification requirements.
Right. Okay. So we do have a motion, and I made a second. So let's do a roll call, please.
Supervisor Lingenfelter?
No.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Gold?
No.
And Chairman Angus?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion fails.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'd like to offer up a motion
Okay.
that these projects only be allowed in either MX or is it M2?
M2.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and discussion. Any further discussion? Seeing none? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
And I am for. So it passes 3-2. Okay. I'm sorry. You know what? I need to take a break before we go on to the regular agenda. So please give us 10 or 15 minutes, 11:23. Let's be back here by 11:35. Calling the meeting back to order. We're on our regular agenda. Number 46 has been pulled. We're on to 47. Discussion possible action, deny the adoption of BOS Resolution 2024-115 for the extinguishment of the drainage easements located in Lot 27, South Valley Park Tract 4068. Ms. Board, you want to make motion? Do we want to hear from Mr. Latowski? Motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Wait. Sorry.
Wait.
If we could just be clear, are we approving the denial?
Approve,
Madam Chair and board members, this was continued from the last board meeting. At that time, it was deny the resolution, and that's what the board continued. Staff has discovered information in the meantime that changes that recommendation and has provided that information to the board for review prior to the board meeting. So I would recommend you hear from Director Latowski before any motions is made.
Mr. Latowski, hop on in.
Good morning, Chairman Angus, members of the board. Staff provided a memo, and it was a result of an extensive research of board records. And what we found was this particular property lies within the Sun Valley Park subdivision, tracks 4068, and previous actions through both a 2003 and 2023 board resolution extinguished a drainage easement on all of the lots within this Sun Valley Park subdivision, except for the subject lot, lot number 27, which the board is considering. Based on this finding and based on the extinguishment of this same drainage easement on the other adjacent lots, the drainage easement on the subject lot 27 serves no purpose anymore, and staff would recommend that the board adopt resolution number 2024-115 on the premise that these easements are no longer necessary and do not comprise a system of drainage easements.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
Why were we told that the drainage from this piece of property was being used by, I don't know, storage unit, and that if we denied this, then the water would be transferred to the highway? So that's no longer true?
Chairman Angus, Supervisor Johnson, that's a good question. And based on our previous comments and testimony at the previous board meeting on this matter, we worked with Mojave County Flood Control, and it was basically our joint determination that if any persons that owned one of these storage units objected, and one resident or one owner of a storage unit did object, that it could just be an inference that there was some drainage that could be precluded from any kind of changes to the topography or berming up on this subject lot 27. But that no longer could be the case because of the extinguishment of the easements that we found on actually the storage development property as well.
So we have no flood control in that area?
Supervisor Johnson, I do want to say a couple of things. One, we don't have any records of previous drainage reports or the site plan for that storage facility. It must have been built a good 20 years ago or so. But knowing what we know now with the discovery of the extinguishment of the drainage easements along the storage facility, that gives us the indication that the Lot 27 drainage easement does not serve in a system of drainage easements, meaning for adjacent properties. So had the storage facility still had their easements in place, and we did not know that at the last meeting, then we would have probably saw it the same way today. But we can now recommend that the resolution be moved forward and passed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Supervisor Bishop will pull her second. I'll change my motion then.
Absolutely.
I have a motion to approve the resolution 2024-115.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 48, and that is approve the adoption of the FY 2024-25 tentative budget with modifications and set June 17th, 2024 as the date for the public hearing for the final budget and tax levy and truth in taxation if applicable, and set a special board meeting for adoption of the final budget on June 17th, 2024 following the public hearing. Mr. Mornian.
Good morning, Chairman Angus, Supervisors. I do have a few slides prepared. So before I get started here, I just want to remind the board that the tentative budget that we're proposing to be adopted today does set the ceiling for the FY25 budget. And so whatever is approved today, when we come back on the 17th for final budget adoption, you cannot increase any expenses in that budget. You can certainly pull things out at that time if you want to, but what we approve today will set the absolute ceiling on the FY25 budget. And so I'll just start off by telling you some things that I've told you before, just kind of restating some facts. Mojave County does have a recurring structural deficit, and this is just a purely mathematical fact. Our budgeted revenues are less than our budgeted expenses, and when you have that situation, you have a structural deficit. I will say that actions taken during the current fiscal year, during FY24, have resulted in some budget savings. Those will provide excess cash reserves, which will be used to balance the FY25 budget. There's roughly $25 million in budget savings, but it's important the board understand that 16 million of that, about 64%, are one-time savings. So whether that is the rundown on there, we had $8 million in local assistance, tribal consistency funding, and so that $8 million offset $8 million of public safety personnel expenses. The board acted to pull back $4.5 million of funding from the sheriff's substations once it became apparent that he was receiving $9 million from the state to fund those projects. And then, as we discussed at the preliminary budget, we just had a timing difference on when we submitted the last $3.5 million of payment to the PSPRS pension. And so that was another $3.5 million of budget savings. So together, those three items, you have $16 million one time, not coming back next year. So important to understand that. The remaining $9 million relate to our recurring revenue and expenses. And so that's truly where the structural deficit exists. And so, on the revenue side, as I told the board at the preliminary budget hearing, we had some revenues come in a little bit higher than expected, primarily property taxes. The deed sale played a big part in that. It was wildly successful this year. But again, the Treasurer's Office sold almost 3,000 parcels of deeded property. That means that their inventory of tax deeded property is very, very, very diminished for next year's sale. And so we can't expect that same sort of cash influx from next year's deed sale. We also had significant amount of vacancy and salary savings, as we've discussed before. And so really those two items made up the biggest portion of that other $9 million. We also received $2.6 million in refunds back from the state's access plan this year. That's something that we cannot count on year after year. It was extremely high this year. Who knows what it will look like next year. So I just want to point out those facts. And the last bullet point on the slide in front of you, if we continue to use cash reserves to balance the general fund, that's going to deplete those reserves. And as I'll show you later, the 5-year projection, you've seen it before, but it doesn't take too many years down the road before we start seeing red. And we won't have enough in the fund balance to continue that path of using that to balance the budget. So when it comes to the 25 budget, I want to talk about a couple of different things. First off, that our contingency reserve is a necessity. That reserve is in place for a number of reasons. It's in place to address risks. It's been insinuated or flat out stated by some members of the public that this is a slush fund. It's not a slush fund. It's there for good reason. It's based on sound fiscal policy. The biggest concerns that we have looking ahead, we continue to have a lack of diverse revenue. So county manager and I have both used the analogy of a two-legged revenue stool. We have state shared revenue and we have property taxes. And so any big fluctuations in those two revenue streams could put us in a tight spot. Our state budget and the ongoing deficit, which the most recent projections are $1.8 billion deficit, leave us with some questions. First off, will the state fund probation? The portion of probation positions that the county has that are split funded, where the state pays a portion, if the state, and this is really the item that is on the block or on the discussion agenda at the state level, that is about $600,000. And so if the state chooses not to fund that on an ongoing basis, then the general fund will have to pick up that $600,000. The other question, top of my mind, is will the state decide to sweep county funds, as they have done in the past when they had budget issues? And what would that look like if they did? We really don't know, but I bring up probation again, since they're already reluctant, it seems, to fund what would be $600,000 in probation salaries. If they were to choose not to fund probation, period, that's a $5 million impact. And so it's just not little things, but one item like that can have a serious impact on the county's general fund. If they were to sweep funds from other sources, such as HERF, things like that, obviously it doesn't impact the general fund, but it still has an impact on the county. And so it's an item that is very much on my mind as we continue to watch what's going to happen at the state level. And then, as I discussed the last time we talked budget, there's some fiscal impacts related to ongoing legislation, a number of things there, primarily court-ordered juvenile fees and court-ordered treatments for Title 36 cases, and then also a bill that did pass this year dealing with the tax lien sale process. We won't know until next February, when the treasurer holds the annual tax lien sale, if the changes that were passed into law this year are going to deter investors from purchasing tax liens. But there were some pretty significant changes to that process, and so it's something that we're keeping an eye on, because that tax lien sale does generate several $1 million worth of revenue for the county each year. And so one of the main purposes of this presentation is to make sure that the board is aware of any changes that have taken place since the preliminary budget hearing and today the tentative budget that's put in front of you. And so those modifications to budget fall into a couple different categories. First of all, just the normal rollover of purchase orders from one year to the next. That's a pretty significant portion. Then there were a couple of different changes and ideas that were discussed by the board during the budget workshop, and so I want to make sure that you're aware of the fiscal impact because they are included in the tentative budget that's before you. And then we could have a number of other adjustments. Those would be new or amended grants and contracts. So any sort of activity like that that has taken place since the budget workshop up to today. And then also, as I discussed before, updated revenue and expense projections. And one item before I move into kind of some more detail on these is CSA has proposed a further recruitment and retention study related to public safety. It comes with a $6,000 price tag for each county, so $90,000 in total. The reaction for most of the counties has been, yes, we're interested, but maybe not ready to move forward with it during the fall semester. CSA is partnering with ASU to conduct the study. The goal of the study is to actually provide tools to each county down at the county level, specific to each county for how they could best implement recruitment and retention strategies for public safety. And so the recommendation at this time, we've included that in the tentative budget because it looks like that conversation will probably pick up again next January before the fiscal year is over. And so we've just basically included it as a placeholder should the counties decide to move forward with that.
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Johnson.
They're asking for $90,000 to tell us how to hire people.
They're asking, Supervisor Johnson, they're asking for $6,000 from each county, so Mojave County's piece would be $6,000, but yes, the total cost of the project is $90,000.
Isn't that what our HR director does?
Madam Chair, Chairperson, Supervisor
Madam
Johnson.
Vice Chair.
Sorry. So just to add a thought or two on this, CSA or universities through CSA provided a study that went into a lot of details about multiple factors related to law enforcement. Why are people attracted or not attracted to law enforcement? What is happening? What is the local, environmental, and social impacts of supporting or not supporting law enforcement in various communities in the country have had on attracting officers? And then it went beyond that to consider what is driving people who make the decision to join law enforcement but then don't stay with one agency or the other. Is it pay? Is it benefits? Is it a retirement? And so it really provided a lot of information. That information was disseminated and discussed. I think what is being proposed here is to go to the next step and say, is there a tool that can be developed so each county, what works in Maricopa or Coconino may be different than what would work for Mojave. Maybe for us, it's more of pay than it is benefits, or maybe it is benefits over pay, or maybe it's overtime or housing subsidy or so on. So it just attempts to tailor a product so each county can use. We don't have it yet, so I can't really go beyond conceptually and principally what is being discussed to explain it to you, other than the challenge of attracting and retaining law enforcement continues, and this is really an attempt statewide to look at each region and each county and come up with a tool, as opposed to continuing what we do now, which is hiring, robbing Peter to pay Paul. I don't know if I answered your question, Supervisor.
Oh, you answered it way longer than I wanted, I'll tell you. But no, you explained it. I guess it's just, I don't believe in going out and giving sheriffs hugs so they'll come and work for us. And I think that Ken Cunningham knows what we need to hire people, and the sheriff knows what we need to hire people. And 5,000 isn't going to make or break us one way or the other. I just wanted to bitch about it.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. This just shows a summary of the modifications, specifically the purchase order rollovers and the totals of any adjustments that have occurred, split out between the general fund and all the other funds within the budget. And so when it comes to the general fund adjustments, the biggest pieces here are two items that the board discussed at the preliminary budget workshop. So the first of those, we brought forth the idea of a small expansion to the PTO buyback program. And so we have a little over $100,000 included in the tentative budget for that purpose. And then the next one, I believe it was Supervisor Bishop that put forth the idea of refunding 10 of the frozen detention officer positions. And so that's in here at a total cost of about $775,000. And then other adjustments in the general fund, the EBT board approved some increases to the health insurance premiums. And so just to remind the board, that was split roughly evenly. The county's picking up a slightly larger piece than the employees are. And so that comes at a cost of about $100,000 to the general fund. And then there's about $150,000 in here, which is a transfer from the general fund to the IT fund. And this is really to replenish that fund. The IT has spent about $150,000 in the current year to replace video management systems throughout the county. And so this is really to replenish those funds that have been spent. And then in future years, they're going to charge out to the various departments in order to make sure that that fund balance remains adequate for continued replacement of this aging infrastructure. I do have one amendment that came after we submitted this package for the board item. This is related to the recorder's office. When they submitted their FY25 budget, inadvertently they had reduced personnel by about $12,000. It was tied to a voter registration specialist position that had been vacant since last September. They do have a need to fund that position fully, and they have what they believe to be a viable candidate for that. And so it's a $7,500 increase. As I said, they had reduced their budget by $12,000 there, so it's still a net savings over FY24. But that also will be included in the final budget when we bring it back. PO rollovers for the general fund, primarily in the sheriff's department, $126,000, mostly tools and equipment that's on order, but they don't expect to receive by the end of the year. And then about $100,000 related to purchase orders for legal expenses and the Justice Court's triennial audit. In our other funds, just to summarize, grants and ARPA, so adjustments here, about $5.5 million increase on the revenue side and about a $9 million increase on the expense side. And then correction to budget for the Legal Services Center. It was not, the fund balance was not all budgeted to be expended next year, and so we've corrected that. And so that's a $7.6 million correction to the budget on the capital improvement side. And then purchase order rollovers, about $2 million for all those other funds. PERF, about $500,000, primarily heavy equipment purchases. Vehicle use was $200,000. Capital improvement, about $200,000. All the different water related departments, about $500,000, and then the landfill, about $560,000. And I can stop and if anyone has specific questions about any of those.
Okay, any questions?
Director Morning, are you working off your slide? Or are you on a page?
I have some additional notes. The detailed list of all the modifications was included in the backup as well.
What page is that?
I can actually, let's see here. So here we have general fund. Let's see if I can get this a little bit bigger for you. So this is the digital budget book that I pulled up for the tentative version, but it's also in the board item backup. Were there any specific questions, Supervisor?
No, I'm just trying to follow along, and I'm
Okay.
looking at a slide with 6 things.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
you're welcome.
So you want the page number? Is that what you're saying? Okay.
In the digital budget book, Supervisor Gould, this begins on page 8. You're welcome. So moving on to tax rates in the proposed tentative budget. So no changes to the FY24 tax rates for the general fund, the library district, flood control, TV district, all remain the same. When we're talking about the primary property tax rate for the county, the proposed rate is 53 cents below the maximum rate, which is 2.2863, and it's about 6.5 cents above the T&T rate, which is 1.6913. I'll just point out I've had questions from several of you individually during the preliminary workshop. I told you we had an estimate, and it's one of the consequences, I guess, of moving our entire budget process forward is that some of the official data that we usually get from the state, by the time we present a preliminary budget, we changed our processes this year, and so we didn't have the official word from the Department of Revenue on that T&T rate at the time we last discussed this. So we have gotten that, then the T&T rate is a little bit lower than what our current tax rate and the proposed tax rate for FY25 is. The budgeted tax levy is about 1.6 million higher than the levy that the T&T rate would generate, and about 2.3 million higher than last year's budgeted levy amount. And so we do have, just for reference, the county does have about 13.7 million in additional levy capacity between where the current levy rate is and where the maximum allowable levy rate is. And we'll have T&T hearings at the next board meeting on the 17th, and those T&T hearings will be for the county primary property tax rate, which affects the general fund, as well as the library and the flood control districts. And so, as I stated before, we do have a recurring structural deficit, revenues not keeping up with budgeted expenses. You can see here, 5-year outlook. As I said before, we're basically going to draw down on the general fund cash balance about $14.4 million to balance FY25's budget. You can see in the years moving forward, that trend continues, although to a lesser degree. The FY25 does include $6 million additional capital funding that we discussed last meeting, $3 million each for the Legal Services Center and the courthouse. And then finally, this is just another way of looking at the next 5 years. The top row that you have here, I'll just point out before we get into this that basically at a minimum, when we start the fiscal year, we look to have a general fund balance that is at least equivalent to 3.5 months worth of operating expenses. And so those would be our recurring expenditures for the first 3.5 months of the year as budgeted, and that is needed cash to take us from the 1st of July through the middle of October when the property tax revenue starts rolling in. And so when you look at the top row here, 60.9 million projected at the end of FY25, that will carry us into FY26, basically our beginning balance. And that middle row is that 3.5 months of expenditures. And so you take the middle row, subtract it from the top row, and you're left with either a surplus or a deficit. And so FY26, as you can see, it's looking good. We have more cash on hand than we need even after we back out those 3.5 months of operating expenditures. FY27, it's about half of that. FY28, we're getting down to pretty thin margins. And then FY29 and FY30, we would not have sufficient reserves to get us through that first 3.5 months of the year. Now, I will point out one thing is that I say the very minimum that we look to start the year with is 3.5 months of operating expenses. Ideally, we have 3.5 months of operating expenses and we have a contingency reserve on top of that, just in case, whatever else might happen. There's a contingency reserve for a reason to address any unexpected events. And so this calculation here does not include any contingency reserve. So it's important to keep in mind because as you can see, FY26, we're fine. We're looking next year to have about a $12 million contingency reserve. It's $11 million for FY25. And then in future years, you get down below what our recommendation for a contingency reserve would be. And we're trying to keep that around 9% or so. Maybe just as another reference point, there was an article in the Miner this past Friday about the City of Kingman's budget process. They've proposed a tentative budget where, and their fiscal policy is a little bit different, but when it comes to their general fund and reserves, they look to have anywhere from 25 to 50% of their annual budgeted expenses as an unassigned fund balance. And they are on pace to have about 50% as an unassigned fund balance at the end of FY25. I think they expect that to normalize more around 30% of budgeted expenses over the next 5 years, but that's still 50% of their annual budgeted expenses is over $30 million. So kind of put things in contrast. We're proposing an $11 million contingency reserve next year. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Mournian? Anyone? No? Oh, Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Director Mournian, do you have a number for salary savings?
For salary savings, we're projecting about $7.5 million in total.
Since the press was reporting that the $18.5 million deficit was closed by vacancy savings. I don't think that's what did it. You also had the $9 million for sheriff substations as a one-time thing, but it was a one-time expense. So it's not an ongoing expense that we would have to cover. It was a one-time expense.
And so what I was saying is that it was a one-time budget savings because not the $9 million, but the $4.5 million that was previously budgeted for those substations. The board pulled that back when we got notice from the state that the state was funding $9 million.
Right, but we won't be building another sheriff substation this year.
Correct, but we also won't have $4.5 million of budget expense that we can cut out of the budget again.
Yeah, I believe when you guys briefed me, you said that our rate was below the TNT rate.
That was our estimate?
I thought was odd.
I vividly recall the conversation, Supervisor Gould, and it was an estimate, as I said, because we've moved up the budget adoption process. We're trying to adopt a final budget before the end of the year, the fiscal year. So it's about a month earlier than what happened in previous years, and we did not have the official rate from DOR when we briefed each of you individually or during the preliminary workshop.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Else have a question? Okay. But now I do have somebody signed up to speak.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you. Steve Moss, Judge Moss.
Madam Chairman, members of the board, County Manager Elters, I'm Steve Moss, presiding judge, Mojave County. I wanted to speak on behalf of the court portions of the budget. Our caseloads have been steadily increasing every year, so the workloads increase because that's directly attributable to what we do within the courts. Despite that, we've managed to have several very productive and engaged meetings with county administration, and I wanted to extend my appreciation to them and to their staff. A lot of progress was made so that we could fully engage on these problems, the fiscal problems and the workload problems. The courts are trying their very best to be good partners with the county administration and the board. We've done some things which we believe will be of assistance going forward in the future. For example, we got a Title 4D grant in the amount of $140,000, which is going to help some. We've got a $70,000 IT bailiff grant, so we're not trying to put those expenses immediately into the general fund to cover some of the expenses that are out there. And so I just wanted to extend my appreciation to the board and to the administration and all the hard work they've done. And the courts will do our best to be a partner to you going forward. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer those.
Okay, any questions for Judge Moss? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the board here?
Before we get into that, Madam Chairman, do the special district budgets, are they, is there any way we can break those out of the overall question?
Chairman Angus, Supervisor Gould, what would you like to see when it comes to the special district budgets?
So can we adopt those separately, or they have to be adopted in the overall?
They are included in the overall budget.
Excuse me, we vote separately on that when we do the final vote, though.
The board votes separately on the tax rates, but the budgets that are derived from those proposed tax rates are included in this overall budget. I can bring up any of those different, flood control, for example, separate tax rate, but it's included in this overall budget.
Now, as far as special districts like GVID, which is a special taxing district, do we adopt their budget in this budget?
The GVID water district is included in this budget.
Okay.
So that's considered an enterprise fund because they derive all their revenue from the fees that they charge their customers.
Well, did they have a property tax that once upon a time?
Supervisor Gould, I believe that goes back to the formation of the district. And I believe that when any one of those special districts is formed, there's generally, as part of that process, and I would defer maybe to Attorney Esplin, but as part of that process, there's I believe, a vote or a proposal where they are allowed to incur certain costs as that district is formed.
Okay.
And the property owners within the district agree to either pay their portion of it up front or have it paid back over a number of years as a property tax assessment.
Okay. Yeah, I know. So they don't have there's no tax rate for GVID that we adopt.
Supervisor Gould, that is correct.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay. Board? Do you want to hear from anybody else, or?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would move to approve the adoption of the fiscal year 2024-2025 tentative budget.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Chairman Angus,
Yes.
I'll just a point of clarification, Supervisor Lingenfelter, your motion is to approve it as the item is written, and that includes setting a special hearing for June 17th.
Yes. Do you need me to read that into the record?
No, you can just say as written.
As written.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the item as written. We have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I believe the ayes have it. Okay, number 49, discussion and possible action to approve the following exceptions to the general fund hiring freeze. There's a bunch of them.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Number 50, approve the decision by the BOS of the May 2024 Board of Supervisors to confirm Laura Skubal as the clerk of the board effective June 1st, 2024. Beginning of the pay period, it ranged 29, step 1, or $93,017.60.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 51, discussion and possible action to improve the recommendation of the county manager to appoint Scott Holtree to the position of Mojave County Development Services Director.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Oh, okay, motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations. Oh, well, all right. Sorry about that. And I'm pulling item 52 to be continued. Do I need a motion for that?
Do you wish to
Continue it?
continue it to another board meeting or just
Yeah.
pulling it indefinitely? Yeah, you will need that.
Okay, make a motion to continue item 52 for another 30 days.
So moved.
I'm just wondering why we're continuing it again.
Because there are people that I needed here to speak to it that couldn't show up today.
Okay.
Okay? So we have a motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you all very much. If there's nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.